So welcome to Iceland, Mr. Andersson.
Again.
Again. This is the fourth time you are playing here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the fourth time and probably about the, seventh show we played here. And it's my fifth time in Iceland because I came here on vacation with my family a couple of years ago. So, I feel like it's a place I begin to know quite well. It's a very familiar landscape, a very familiar kind of a maritime community to my own, because I come from Scotland and spent a long time on the west coast of Scotland and the islands, and working in aquaculture and things. So it seems very familiar. It's easy on my eyes. You know, some people might come to Iceland and go, "Wow," and I come here and go, "Yeah." It's kind of what I'm. Maybe a little bit more snow and the odd volcano we don't have in Scotland, but many parts where I was travelling around Iceland yesterday was. I could very easily have just instantly transported myself to several parts of north and west coast Scotland. It just is very much the same landscape and the same feel. One of the things about this show, you see, is it's the music is kind of set in stone. It's a performance of 1972's Thick as a Brick, as it is on the record, followed by all of Thick as a Brick 2, as it is on the record. And although both albums contain areas for improvisation, they are still, arrangement-wise, very, very set. But we can, as the tour progresses, we change little elements of the performance, which is a little bit more theatre, lots of audio-visual bits on a screen. It's just nice to have the option to keep, modifying and changing your show, because it doesn't want to be static. It doesn't want to be like a Broadway musical where everything is just going to be in place every night, or a Beethoven symphony where every note has to be just in place the way the composer wrote it. I'm not that kind of a musician. I like the idea of evolution and change and improvisation, but I still need a solid structure. So it's 80% heavily arranged and performed from precise memory and focus, and 20% kind of a little looser and improvised, and with the possibility for it to develop as it goes through a tour.
Let's talk a little bit about your flute.
I was hoping that that's what it was going to be when I saw you pointing down there, that we were going to talk about this flute. Okay.
I heard that you are always, you bring it with you everywhere you go. Is that true?
It's true that I tend to carry it around with me because I'm not one of those guys who, when I go to bed at night, I don't take my watch off and leave it on the bedside table. I don't leave my wallet, somewhere. Some things I just keep with me, and I have two flutes with me on tour. One I carry with me at all times. The other one is locked up with some of my equipment, with my guitar and so on. I have left it in two restaurants in my life and walked away leaving my flute behind. And luckily on both occasions I was able to get back and found my flute. On one occasion it was actually stolen in a restaurant in a hotel, and we couldn't find my flute, and someone had taken it. One of the hotel employees had taken it and hidden it, and we searched all the area around the hotel and the kitchens. I got the manager down, and we eventually found my flute. This is my mugger's flute. If you steal this from me, it's not going to be worth a lot of money, and I can replace it in almost every capital city in the world same day, because it's not a special flute. It's an advanced student model flute. It's not a a super valuable conservatory flute. I have one that the cheapest flute I own is also the most valuable flute. The cheapest flute I own is a real basic student model flute, the cheapest in the range of that instrument maker, and it's also the most valuable because it's the best travelled flute in the world. It's completed 100 million kilometers.
Is that the flute that
The
you
flute
sent
that went
to
up to
space?
the International Space Station, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one hand, it's the cheapest flute.
Oh.
On the other hand, if it was on eBay, it would probably be the most valuable flute in the world. So my first instrument was the guitar.
Yeah.
Right? When I was 11 years old, my father bought me a very cheap, almost unplayable guitar. It actually goes back a couple of years before that. When I was 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old, I bought an Elvis Presley plastic ukulele, which, in the advertisement in the nursepaper, it looked like a full-size Elvis Presley guitar. Wow! And when it arrived in the post, it was this horrible little thing that was just a toy and was out of tune and just awful. And I was so disappointed, because I dreamed about something that looked like it was in the ad in the newspaper, and it was my first experience of being conned by advertising, but not my last. And when I was 18, I was a not very good but okay guitar player, and then a bad thing happened. I wasn't in a motorcycle accident and lost my fingers. I didn't suffer from some terrible disease where my hands wouldn't work. An even worse thing happened. I heard Eric Clapton, and I decided I was never going to be as good as that, and so I decided to quit playing guitar. And I took my trusty Fender Stratocaster, 1960s Fender Strat, probably worth $30,000 today. And I took it into the music store and said, I want to give this back. I can't, I don't want to play it anymore. And it was one of those days in the northwest of England when it was raining, clouds, and I came into the music shop, handed the guy my guitar, and then suddenly outside the window the clouds parted, the sun shone through the window, and illuminated off this object hanging on the wall, which was a flute. And I don't know why, but I just said, but I'll take the flute. It's because it was much cheaper than the guitar. And so I took a flute out of the shop, and I didn't know how to play it. I didn't have any idea why. It was just something, it was an odd little moment, But it was a life-changing moment that obviously affected the rest of my life. The album that preceded Thick as a Brick was an album called Aqualung, and it was in part a rock album, but in part a singer-songwriter kind of album. Then the original album of the Aqualung album, which preceded this, was an album which critics, writers, people described as being a concept album. And I said always at the time, it's not a concept album. There are maybe 3 songs on the album that are loosely related to each other, but the rest of the songs have nothing to do with that. They're standalone songs. So after that, when it came to writing a follow-up album, and I didn't want to just make another album that sounded the same as Aqualung, which was becoming quite successful, commercially speaking. And so I thought, right, maybe we should do a concept album now, and we'll make it the mother of all concept albums. We'll really go to extremes. And so as a bit of a parody of the prog rock concept album genre that was just coming in 71, 72, I thought it'd be fun to join that particular bandwagon, that particular new direction in music, but to do it in a kind of humorous way, a little bit of a parody. But parody is, as I'm sure most people appreciate, parody is often the comedic mask, the mask of humor that you place over sometimes serious subjects. It's a way of bringing people into something with a smile, but once you've got them, you show them the dark, scary interior. And I think, in a way, Thick as a Brick was that. It was meant to be light-hearted, a parody, a fiction, a surreal look at the work of a little schoolboy who was precocious and had great ideas, but at the same time he's a little confused. His background is in a culture where he's filled with notions of military and grandeur and school and a life almost gone by in terms of English society. Of course, there is a little bit of me in that, but with everything anybody writes, there's either a little or maybe a lot of yourself that you put into the characters and the expression. With Alanis Morissette, it's all about her. You know, I mean, her songs are just me, 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 me. It's you know, frankly, a bit of a bore. Other people just write songs that are like Frank Zappa. It was all about him, her, because Frank would never let you see his soft center. He just wanted to be a little cruel, cynical and bitter and be observational. And I'm somewhere in between, more on the observational, but sometimes I let you see the, you know, the moments inside, even though they could be a bit embarrassing or awful. And that's my way of finding that balance between the head and the heart in music. I'm mostly in the head, but a little bit of the heart if you catch me on a good day, or maybe a bad day.
Thick as a Brick 2 is not a Jethro Tull album as such. It's Ian Anderson.
Well, that's what it says on the cover.
Yeah. Why is it not a Jethro Tull album?
I explained I didn't have a good experience of doing Thick as a Brick in the USA and some other countries back in 1972, and in the last 10 years particularly, I've done more and more concerts where I bill it as Ian Anderson. Jethro Tull, because of the history of the band, going back, you know, 44 years, if people think Jethro Tull, they think obviously about certain repertoire, a certain identity, which means different things to some people. Some people think of Jethro Tull folk rock band. Some people think of Jethro Tull blues band. Most people think of Jethro Tull as a kind of a rock band because they've heard, I suppose, the most obvious songs that are a little bit more rocky. There's a danger when it just says, you know, if you go to the supermarket and pull the tin down off the shelf and it says on the side Jethro Tull, then you think you're going to get Deep Purple with the flute, and that may be the case sometimes, but it's not the case most of the time. So there is a danger that people will come expecting to hear only certain repertoire and that it is kind of rock music. So that's okay. Sometimes I'm really happy to do that. But because there's a lot of music that over the years has been more acoustic music, perhaps more orchestral music, because I do lots of concerts, not all the time, but you know, here and there I do concerts with various symphony orchestras, with string quartets, I do acoustic tours, I do rock tours, I do, in this case, more of a production concept kind of a thing. And I feel more comfortable when I say Ian Anderson. Even if I use Jethro Tull in the billing somewhere, it's Ian Anderson plays the Christmas Jethro Tull when I do, you know, Christmas concerts. Ian Anderson plays the acoustic Jethro Tull when it's the more acoustic Jethro Tull repertoire, he said, miming an acoustic guitar. So it's kind of just a way of, I suppose, giving a little subtle signal to people that, in this case, it's not just a rock concert. It's something a little more evolved. And either way, it doesn't change what I do on stage. It's just me singing my songs, doing my music.